Hello everyone, David Lee here. Earlier this month, I was invited to participate in a STEAM panel discussion at the EduTech conference here in Singapore. The title of the panel session was called Building and Running an Effective STEAM Program, which was moderated by Thompson of Dulwich College in Singapore. Basically, all the panelists have experience in implementing a STEAM program at their school. So in this video, I'd like to share the discussion that we had at the panel session. Since we're on the topic of STEAM, I wanted to share with you a giveaway that Creation Crate is doing currently. Creation Crate is a tech subscription box. Basically, every month you are given components with an online course that will help you to build something really cool, like a mood lamp, for example. A couple of years ago, I did do a review on the mood lamp project, so make sure you check that out. So it's a great way to learn how to code. So if you want to learn more about the giveaway, check out the description below. Okay, so I hope you will gain some insights from our panel conversation that will help you to implement your own STEAM program. So without further ado, here is the panel conversation.
So let me start by just introducing our guests. On my left here we've got Gayle, and Gayle is the STEAM education specialist and head of Makerspace at Nanyang Girls High School here in Singapore. So lovely to have you. And we've got David here, or another person heavy on Twitter, so someone you can follow. I'm not sure, Gayle, if you're on Twitter. No? Okay, lovely.
Have your time.
So David is over at the SAS Singapore American School, and he's a STEM and EdTech coach. So lovely to have you on the panel today. Our third person is Francis, and Francis is over in the Philippines. So lovely for you to join us. He's at Xavier School and is an EdTech specialist. So welcome to the panel. And also from Dulwich College, but over in China at one of our Chinese schools in Shanghai, Puxi. I'd like to welcome Michelle Jensen, who looks as a STEM teacher and librarian at Dulwich. She's on Twitter as well. So let's put our hands together and welcome our guests. Excellent. So I scared our panelists a little bit a few months ago when I sent them what looked like an essay of questions that I was going to bombard them with. And they came back to me and said, which of these are we to prepare for? And I said, let's just wait and see. We'll go through. There's some questions in there which might be a little difficult, and questions that I have. In our school in Dulwich, we are looking at the STEAM program and what that means. But I, as an EdTech director, often have questions about the relevance of STEM, other programs in that area, and where we're going with it. So I guess we might start this panel discussion by having a little introduction from our guests and telling us a little bit about what they're doing in their own context, in their own schools. So Gayle, I might pass to you.
Hi, everybody. So I'm the head of the Makerspace at Nanyang Girls School. It's an all-girls Chinese school here in Singapore. And I am the maker mama. I've been there for about 3 years. And I think what's different about our makerspace than others is we really are STEAM. We really put that extra A in, which I'd like to talk about in a little while. I'm not going to take up the time to do that now. But it is very science, technology, engineering, art, and math. It is a place where the kids are encouraged to come in unscripted, to do class assignments, things that you're doing for competition or drama. We do have level-wide initiatives and programs that also go on with a particular level. We just finished a Micromaker Ed class for the entire 7th grade or Sec 1 level. So there is a great combination of organic unfolding. They can come in and make projects that have nothing to do with school, and without them knowing it, they are using math and science and physics to make their projects, but it's coming out of who they are. So the triad that we talk about in our makerspace is connecting the head to the hands. So the head, you have all these ideas, which are fantastic, but as long as they stay in your head, there's angel wings and harps all around it. They're perfect. You connect your hand to get them out, even if you're using tape and toilet paper roll to make your prototype. That's great. But if you continue just to connect your head and your hands, you're a human doing, not a human being. So we connect the heart. and we connect our head and hand to our hearts so that we can empower the kids to figure out who they are, what they think, what they feel, what they know, not necessarily what they think they want the adults to hear from them. So without connecting the heart aspect of it, they just become little human doings and not human beings. So we really are a mix of an organic, very organic space that does 3D printing, sewing. I teach girls how to use major power tools for building. But at the same time, we have curriculum programming as well. So that's kind of what's going on in our little space.
Currently, I am the Design and Innovation Specialist in Singapore American School for the elementary. Basically, I help design learning experiences, STEM learning experiences into current units. So we're trying to make STEM just like an everyday thing, not a separate thing. My background is I designed a STEM program in Korea called CoLab program, and basically what we did was we integrated STEM education, project-based learning, design thinking, and maker culture all into one. Just because I was a bit confused going to conferences and seeing these sessions all kind of siloing all those teaching approaches when it all should fit in one type of holistic learning experience. So it's all standards-based and part of the curriculum so that it's not just certain people doing STEM or it's an outside thing, it's an everyday thing in school.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim Tuscano from Manila, from the Philippines. I am the current EdTech coordinator for the grade school in an all-boys school in the Philippines. So what makes our STEM or Makerspace thing is that, well, I can be very, very proud of it. We're actually an award-winning. The approach behind our Makerspace is an award-winning approach. If you know 100, do you know 100 from Finland? It's a non-profit organization. So our innovation approach was awarded as one of the top education innovation last year on Spotlight on Sustainability. So what we did was actually to, just to be honest, there's a different education context in the Philippines, and I work in a local school. When we planned our Makerspace, and just a disclaimer, Gayle was one of those people who have helped us also. She visited the Philippines 2 years ago and informed us of how we can do it. But what we wanted was to localize Makerspace, especially keeping in mind that we want to scale it with the local public school system, where there's a challenge in terms of funding. So like David, we now work on project-based learning, design thinking, and we added a dimension that involved the United Nations SDGs to make it real world. But at the same time, this is one thing that we wanted to be very, very clear with everyone. We're not just doing STEAM or STEM. We wanted an interdisciplinary approach, regardless of what label you want to put it. We want everyone, like what David has mentioned, no siloing, just working together, because in the real world, you don't say, oh, I'm using English skills right now. It's just everything is just there, and you just need to make sure that the students can call in those skills that they have. So yeah.
Okay, I don't think I need that. I have my great teacher voice. So building and running an effective STEAM program, I don't think I've reached that. Okay, I've been working in this space for 10 years and I'm still experimenting and failing, and I think that's the key to it. So at Dulwich College this year in Puxi, we're doing it very different from last year because we're learning from our mistakes. We have a thing called the SE21 approach, which is across our whole Dulwich network. So the SE21 approach is STEAM, entrepreneurship, and 21st century learning. So we have 3 spaces that we're using for SE21, and the students have a 3-hour dream project. So over the year, they're developing their own dream project, and then they come to the spaces that they need to use for that specific moment in their dream project. So it's like the Genius Hour, but we're doing it over 3 hours. Last year, I was just the STEAM teacher at Dulwich College, and I taught 2 years old to 16-year-olds 1 hour a week. Now we all know why that failed. Okay, and before that I actually ran a STEAM project in a high school that worked with what I thought was the way STEAM was, getting the science teacher, the technology teacher, the engineering teacher and the maths teacher together to create projects and help them reach their outcomes, which again was problematic. So I've been failing and trialing for the past 10 years in the STEAM space, and I'm still not there yet because I'm still ideating.
I guess one of my questions for you is that we seem to use STEM and STEAM interchangeably, and even within our own titles we've got STEAM and STEM. What does the A actually mean to you, and how do we ensure that we're doing it justice within the program? So Gayle, maybe I'll throw to you first.
This is one of my things that I am trying to rally. So when you think about the arts, I think people initially think of maybe drawing and sculpture or painting and sculpture when they hear the word art, but it's really arts. It's science and theater and music and literature, and it's all those things that collectively make a culture and cumulatively make a civilization. So we know about Egypt, we know about Greece or ancient Greece because of artifacts, art and science. So if somebody were to come to me and say, I need you to design something for me, I have a critical problem, a critical issue. And I said, fine, I will do it, but I'm only going to use 4 of my fingers, I'm not going to use my thumb. Like, why wouldn't I use every resource? Or I'll use 4 of my senses, not all 5. I just won't use my sight. So it is the way we dress, the way we live, it is the culture that makes us who we are. And I think that, I'm not sure why people continue to use STEM. Maybe it's based on childhood experiences with what the art or what arts are, but it does make who we are culturally and again as a civilization. If you brushed your teeth this morning, you used a toothbrush. That toothbrush was designed by industrial designers, and there were a bunch of people that sat around a table and argued how long that handle was going to be, how many bristles. Colgate sat around with people who, your eye can see 6,000 different individual whites. There were arguments about which white is clean. So it is impact everything and every day that we do. And so I think to leave that out, we were talking a little bit earlier about this man-made construct of these different disciplines and silos. And I think there's a time and a place for that, but I think we sort of overdid it a little bit by categorizing knowledge and education, and it needs to just blend a little bit more. So that's how I feel about STEAM.
I mean, David, your role as STEM is listed as STEM. Was this a conscious decision by SAS to focus on that area, or is it more that it's so interchangeable that it doesn't matter as much whether it's STEM or STEAM?
Yeah, I think STEM, just the term STEM is more popular. So when we talk about STEM, parents automatically know. And I continue to use it. But for me, STEM really just means integration of subject areas based on a authentic performance task that the students do. And there is like a mindset and culture involved with that. But I personally, when I talk to my colleagues and stuff, I talk about transdisciplinary pedagogy, and that is basically integration, real world, and developing competencies and mindsets.
So would you say now to the panel then that we're actually seeing a shift from the original reason why STEM was introduced, which was in order to sort of fulfill some of those skills that were maybe lacking in the US in public schools, now where we start to see an environment where we're trying to be more interdisciplinary in our units? I guess some people would argue, what about English and literature and language, I guess, which could partly be part of the arts.
It is all part of the arts.
Where do we move, where do we stick with STEM because it's well known, and where do we start to move towards more of an interdisciplinary style of thinking and more bigger picture?
Or do we come up with a completely new term that doesn't use either one of those acronyms,
that describes something new. So we need to have a paradigm shift somehow. And if we keep on sticking to the same old, then we keep on trying to, I'm using my teacher voice too, trying to use an old term to describe something, I think that can almost hold us back from creating something new. So I think that maybe there needs to be a little paradigm shift in what we call interdisciplinary education and not get into these camps, because then we have these discussions that really don't mean much.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that. That was actually a discussion when we were looking into the Makerspace. You know, it's always, the idea of STEM, I think, is a specialization, like for a school to specialize on something. And I think that's a conscious decision on the part of the school to really focus on that. But for example, when we discuss about, are we really building an innovation center and invest on that? Are we gonna rename Xavier School as a STEM school? And part of our decision, based on our reflection, is that we really just want our students to be well-rounded, right? Because if you give them the opportunity of just being a STEM student, I mean, you're really defeating the purpose of having a school that has a well-rounded approach into learning. While Gayle mentions about like the arts and everything, I've always had this discussion with the STEM purists. That's what I call them. In the end, when you ask the student to really go out of the school, solve real-world problems, face the real life, I mean, they need to be equipped with different sets of skills. And if we really focus on STEM, for example, what are we giving up? What are we gaining from that conscious decision? And I think that's very, very important. We were discussing a while ago, and it's very important to really look into the vision of the school. If the vision of the school is a well-rounded student or a holistic education, is focusing too much on STEM, will it leave something out from our students? Like in real life, for example, that's why we were gunning for transdisciplinary, but just to be honest, the Philippine education system is so traditional as of the moment, so it's really hard to break the walls between different disciplines or subjects. So that's why we're doing interdisciplinary. But in all honesty, we want to break down the walls of these different subjects. Because in the end, we want our students to really solve challenges, not just through robotics or coding. What about theater? Like there are theaters, I have a colleague in California, and they try to give social justice messages through theater performance. And they involve STEM on that, on lighting, on everything. So you have those kinds of things where students are equipped with all those skills. We let them choose, right? We let them choose how they would like to face those problems in their lives. Teacher Boss.
Yeah. So my understanding was initially STEM was a call to educators that industry was lacking creative people in science, technology, engineering, and maths. There were less and less people wanting to go into those subjects in high schools and less people wanting to go into those subjects in universities. So I looked at that, and I'm looking at the data. You know, we're automating all of these jobs. Children need to have skills to think with big data, to crunch numbers with computers. So I might be your purist, but for me, I was answering that solution with my art knowledge, because my art form when I was an art practitioner was new media art. So I was using those skills to create not a program but a pedagogical approach to teaching. So it's my pedagogical approach, not, art was doing a really good job. Drama were doing a really good job. They're already doing those things, but industry needed more graduates in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And then, it's evolved into something else, but we still need to be aware that we're not actually educating our children right now to be able to step out of the classroom and be safe online. We're not educating our children to be able to use big data and understand even how to ask the big data the right questions to maybe solve pollution, maybe deal with poverty and all these kinds of things that our students at Dulwich are looking at the UN goals. Well, they need to crunch this big data with these kinds of thinking. So in my Makerspace, that's the kind of things that we look at. And so science, technology, engineering and maths in a creative and artistic way is really, really important. So, drama did well, art did well. We just really needed to focus on these kinds of things, and we still do at my campus, yeah.
No, I guess as a panel here, we're all very lucky that we have these STEAM programs in our schools and that we've got leadership who are happy to embrace these. What advice would you give to people in the audience who are at that very start of their journey where they're saying, I want to begin this? Do they need to have these expensive innovation centres and labs? How do they go about getting their leadership on board? Because part of what we've discussed here is that the message from industry and the message from marketing is that this is what STEAM or STEM should be. How do we make sure that our leaders have not bought into something that's the wrong message? So how would we go about setting up? Yeah.
So I think it really is important that it's top down, bottom up. To have it be any other way, you need to know what the mission and the culture of your school is. So even though there are certain things that you might find common in makerspaces overall, there are certain patterns of materials or tools or approaches, you have to look at your unique school. What is your school about? What is it that your school's culture is about? And how do you approach teaching and learning? So it's very individual. I have local schools and actually international schools that come to Singapore that visit my Makerspace all the time for a learning journey. And I sort of throw it back at them. It's like, this is the Makerspace for Nanyang. It might not be appropriate for yours. You might not have the space. You might not have the budget. So what is it that you want to, what's the outcome? And then be willing to make a zillion different, I don't want to call them mistakes, but learning opportunities along the way.
It's failing.
Yeah.
Failing is fine. We've got to embrace that.
Yeah, well, and I'm trying to find a new word for that, only because there's such a stigma with that word.
Why don't we just unstigmatize the word?
Good luck with that. That's a big job right there. But yes, I mean, I go out and I make mistakes and I throw myself out in front of people all the time because that's how you know what to do by what not to do. I think you need to take it one step at a time. I think you need to think about the space. It doesn't have to be the biggest space or fanciest space. And to be honest with you, my school for the last 3 years, my Makerspace is in the underground car park. It's not a very fancy, elaborate place. So sometimes what happens in the space is more important than what the space looks like. And sometimes you can have a fancy space where nothing's happening. It's nice when those two can actually combine, when you have a great space with great things happening. So I think it's more about ideas driving tools than tools driving ideas is the main thing. And you have to take one step at a time and have consensus from a team. Not one person, not one administrator, not one teacher. So I think developing a team first, which is what my school didn't do. And I'm actually in the process of leaving my school to move on to help other schools. But I am one person that has been taking a whole makerspace for the last 3 years, and it's a job of 3 or 4 people. So developing a team is the first thing, which has nothing to do with budget in-house, and a shared responsibility and a shared vision, and just one little thing at a time. And each grain of sand then collectively makes a beach. But don't think that you're going to make a beach all in one day. It doesn't happen.
For me, I totally think that a STEM program can happen in any school. When we started our STEM program, we didn't have the budget, so it forced us to look at pedagogy, the way teachers teach, so really focus on inquiry. It also helped us focus on actually the learning processes, so that's why we were so drawn to design thinking, because it gave students a toolkit for creative problem solving. We're constantly giving these students real world problems, design thinking allowed them some type of tool, the mindsets, those kind of things, and help navigate through those projects and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it can totally be replicated. I think it is really just the skills, the more 21st century skills are more focused if you don't have those other resources, I guess.
Excellent, thank you. Now, I'm just aware of the time, and I know we've got a lot of questions from the audience. So, okay, this second question here is a really important one, and for a lot of us who are just starting our journey, is how do we get started? How do we, as one teacher, make a change? And as a director in a school, often those teachers, those champions, those people who are willing to have a go without us saying, please give it a go, they're the ones that we're looking for. So from my perspective, it's about starting small. You don't need to have a world-class space or expensive items. The design thinking process. So have a look, there's a lot of great resources online that you can access. It's about getting those conversations, and when you start to say to children, what's a problem you want to solve? That's often a really difficult thing for them. Sometimes it's more difficult than trying to come up with a solution to that problem. So looking at things that really matter to them. I know in our school with our junior school students, we've been sending them looking at the UN sustainability goals. Have a look at a problem, and then providing them with tools that they can access, information, people to speak to, like our last speaker was talking about. You don't actually need any resources to solve these things. They're all free and available. It's just about giving the child a voice and access to resources. That would be my piece.
And what I would recommend is, if you were really starting at the molecular level, is take one of your own lessons and try to do it differently. Try to incorporate more than your own subject matter into the lesson. And then the next step from that, this is, really before having the school have any big vision, this is just you as an activist, partner with another teacher. And then it starts to grow from there also. And then share with your colleagues at teacher meetings what you're doing. So that's another way, before the school is even aware of what's happening. Just try different things in your own classroom, one lesson. And then it becomes 2 lessons, and then it becomes a curriculum, and then you're partnering with somebody else from a different discipline.
Can I just add to that? In terms of working with other teachers, something that I really want to share, 2 things. Number 1, start with your friends, not just with any other teacher. Start with your friend or a person who really share your vision. That will make things easier. If you share the same vision, if you share the same kinds of thoughts, then work with those teachers. And then in the end, you will have the ripple effect, because now teachers see, or students see, what you're doing. Second thing, in terms of preparing your Makerspace or your STEM program, it's very important that you look at how you will sustain the program. David mentioned about the pedagogical aspect, and you really need to train teachers. Second, something that we worked on in terms of being skilled in the Philippines is that we started what we call as a community-based, community-supported Makerspace, wherein all the materials that we have is actually coming from the homes of our students, meaning we don't ask for 3D printers. Like Jay mentioned a while ago, we don't have, our first Makerspace, we didn't have 3D printers. We don't have any tech except the iPads of our students. So what we did was, one thing that we looked into it is, students are scared if they know that the thing that is in there is expensive. They will be scared to touch it, to use it, because they know that if it gets broken, they have responsibility over it. And sometimes we talk about money and funding. So what we did in our school was that we actually, my principal, I told her at the middle of the school year, I want to build a Makerspace, a program, and she said, we have no budget, it's the middle of the school year. And what she did was to actually help me acquire materials from our local carpentry shops, from our parents. She wrote a letter asking for plastic bottles, the brown t-shirt rolls, or those kinds of stuff. And when the students have access to those recyclable materials, not that expensive materials. They were even more courageous into trying to build things, whether under the curriculum, part of the curricular aspect, or just mainly going there during lunch break and do some passion project of their own.
So this next question is, what do you think are the most critical success factors of a STEAM program? And I know you've kind of touched on it by talking about that basic idea of where do we get started. Do you want to touch on this one in terms of what you're doing in Shanghai?
So I think it's sustainability of a STEAM program is more important. So when I stepped into your session of design thinking with the teachers and talking about how can we as a group of teachers who are interested in creating a STEM or STEAM effect or program or way or approach, pedagogy, whatever you want to call it, how can we design think this? How can we iterate this? How can we turn it into something that's going to be sustainable? Not everybody wants to do it in a makerspace. Not everybody wants to do it in a lab. You have to get buy-in from all of your community parents as well. Do design thinking sessions with all of them. I think that's the most powerful way to move forward, is to get everyone on board in this kind of day and age, but not lone soldiers, like you're saying. When you leave, is your makerspace still going to be going through, like if you've got buy-in from the whole community and you use your energy there first, then possibly, we call it the London bus effect. If we get run over by the London bus, are we still going to have that project? And our principal constantly talks about that, because it's an English school. You are really held accountable that if you do get run over by the London bus, that program needs to still be moving forward, because you've used your energy during school time to create it. So design thinking with all of the stakeholders to create this program that everyone has a buy-in, bring some students, and they're just beautiful sessions. Whenever you walk into a design thinking session, it's just so beautiful.
I think the other thing is really important advice that some people gave me is that you really need to know the narrative of your school. There's no point trying to drive a STEAM program that you've seen in another school if it doesn't fit that story. So for us, when I joined Dulwich is very much about the history, the culture, British history, the arts, Shakespeare. Now, if I come in and start to try and drive STEAM and virtual reality and those things in that area in my own way, that's not going to fit into that context. I'm not going to get buy-in. But if we can start to have a look at how STEAM can promote and enhance the arts, drama, those things that we're already comfortable with, that's where I'm going to start to get the most success. So I think really know that narrative of your school and where they're coming from. Okay, I'm conscious of time. One more question. One more question.
Oh, go boss.
David, give us, end on a positive note. Tell us one really exciting lesson that you're going to be doing next week in STEAM with your students.
Great. So I do elementary. Will we just making it a weekly thing?
I actually missed the whole program.
Maybe we should talk about that.
So my girls, it's not elementary, but everything that I do actually can be adjusted for any age, from kids to grown-ups. Learning is ageless. You just have to sometimes modify a skill or a tool or two. Just did something for a 12-week program for all the girls called Micromaker Ed, where the microbit was not the star. It was the kids' brains that were the stars of this thing. Again, ideas driving tools. So instead of doing a linear approach of doing microbit first and then making something afterwards, we actually alternated every other week. Classes were split in half. And we had microbit classes, and the other half of the class would be having Maker Ed, where they're learning how to make things, and it would go back and forth. I saw the demographics of my girls. Half of them are very crafty. The other ones really like robotics. So just to complicate my life, because it wasn't complicated enough, gave them the option of 2 projects. Girls can either make e-wearables, or they could be given a motor and make something move. So that's what I did for 12 weeks, came up with extraordinary things. And the problem we solved, because admin wanted to know, what problem are you solving? These are Sec 1, 7th grade Singapore girls, and I have to say I've been here for 6 years. I say this with great respect and deference. The kids have kind of forgotten how to be kids here. There's not a lot of play. So the problem to be solved was, how do you have fun as a kid? So the first day of the program, the kids are asking me, so what problem are we solving? They're so well conditioned. I said, you have to figure out how to have fun within these parameters. These are the things that I would like you to learn. So I create a framework for anything to happen. It's not chaos, but it is a framework for anything to happen. And it kind of blew their little minds all over the place. So we had this, I think it was the only program like this on the island, where making was truly integrated with coding to make something fun that they will be able to transfer everything they learned by learning more about who they are and how they feel and what they're passionate about into projects that where the stakes are higher on sustainability or other themes that matter more locally and globally. But before you can do that, the kids need to figure out who they are. Because otherwise they're just going to regurgitate back to you what they think you want to hear.
Okay, there's some very exciting things happening there. And if you want to touch base with any of our panelists here, you can touch base with them on Twitter or you can connect with them through the website. But I'm sure they're more than happy to give you advice and share with you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you very much.